Good evening and welcome to the Facilities Usage and Planning Subcommittee meeting here at the George M. Romm Little Theater at Brockton High School. Today is Tuesday, July 11th. The time is 5 o'clock. And to begin the meeting, I'd like to establish a quorum. Mrs. Ehlers?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Asak?
Here.
And I am here, Jared Homer. And the second item on our agenda tonight is to review the proposal to grant easement for Boys and Girls Club access to Keith Field from West Elm Street. So just in reviewing what we talked about last time, we had representatives from Boys and Girls Club here. They presented us with some information. We did discuss making a site visit to Keith Field where the Boys and Girls Club and their architects would mark the property for us so that we could explore a couple of different options they proposed. And initially we had been told that they were going to flag the property, mark the property on Monday this week. I think we're just waiting for confirmation that that has been done, and we have set up a meeting for Wednesday, a site visit for Wednesday at 6:15 after the groundbreaking for the new public safety building across the street to go over and view that location. I know there's some concern about whether or not the flags and the markings have been put out there for us to view that. And we're just waiting for confirmation that that has been done. And as long as that's done and ready and prepared for us to go view it, that is what our scheduled next meeting would be, to go and view that markings, view the sight lines and the property and the proposals for where that facility would be built. Does anyone have any points or issues to raise for item number 2? Yeah. Mrs. Ehlers?
I had an opportunity, I hate to pull her into this, but Ms. Azak and I had an opportunity to talk about this earlier, and one of the questions that I did not realize was whether they're going to be moving the stone pillars to be able to account for in and out traffic, because it doesn't look like it's big enough to be able to fit 2 cars at the same time going through those pillars. And so I understand upgrading the Eagles, that type of thing, but that didn't come up in the last conversation, and I'm not 100% sure it's doable without moving those stone pillars further apart to account for traffic in and out.
Right. I don't believe that was part of the plan to move the pillars at all. They were planning to refurbish them, but it is narrow to get cars in and out at the same time. But so it will be a traffic flow issue, but in the last proposal, my understanding was they were not going to move them.
Okay.
And the alternate was to move the entrance over and still use these stone pillars. So they were going to be refurbished but not moved.
Okay.
Thank you. Mrs. Asak?
Thank you. So I had a chance to drive by, and so did Mr. Homer, and I didn't see any flags. So, we just want to make sure we have the information we need if we're planning a meeting, which is tomorrow night, rather than, it's just a crazy schedule. Everyone's schedules are pretty busy right now. Mm-hmm. So if they haven't flagged it, we really need that flagged to visually see, the way that they have it as far as their diagram, what they need and how they're going to, what the potential entrance would be. So, if there's a way we can reach out to them, otherwise maybe postpone the meeting. It might be premature if they haven't, and that's all, just to make sure that we have the information as needed, especially we're requesting our attorneys and city officials and city employees to be out there. Maybe if we had more information before we met to make sure that we have what we need.
I know Attorney Mello had been in contact with them before, but I haven't. I don't know if there's any way for any of us to get a hold of them to find out if they're planning to do it tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, whatever it is, tomorrow ahead of the meeting, but, okay.
I'm going to email Attorney Mello.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions for item number 2? No? Okay. Item number 3 is just a review of the warehouse storage space options. This had come up earlier in one of our other meetings. We had discussed how the lease for the Perkins warehouse, we had voted moving ahead for the next school budget that would not be part of the plans for using that storage space, and that raised questions just about where we stand in terms of removing our property from the warehouse, or are we looking for other warehouse storage spaces? And just to kind of find out where we stand with warehouse usage and storage spaces. Dr. Cobb, do you have any update for us?
Yes. So at this point, we do not have any other storage space locations identified. I think that the last meeting, I think Joyce had asked Aldo about the monthly basis. You know, I would say we need at least until the end of the summer when we distribute things to the schools and replace furniture, so at least until the end of August.
Do any members have any questions about the plan? Mrs. Sailors?
Just out of curiosity, so Perkins Street, and I have not seen it, so I can't speak to it, but I know that I've had a chance to talk to some of my colleagues about how big the space is. You said to wait until the end of the summer until we have a chance to clear out. What percentage of the stuff, and I use that in quotes, what percentage of the contents would you say is going to actually realistically be moved out of there by the end of the summer? And do you think we're going to be having the same conversation again then?
Right. You know, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of equipment there, a lot of materials. You know, I'm talking really about the desks and chairs that, you know, every summer we pretty much replenish. You know, some of the stuff that's unserviceable in the schools and replace it with, and we have ample, you know, furniture to replace it with. But there's other things that, again, by the end of the summer, some of the, you know, like the distribution of products for the paper, supplies, and chemicals, we can get out of there. A lot of the desks we can get out of there, but there's quite a bit of, what do we say, excess materials, you know, educational materials that are pallets of materials that we're trying to dispose of, you know, some kind of way, and that there's no place for that to go right now. So
that actually has to come on a school committee agenda item, and I can do that in August, because the Reach for Reading materials, which was our old ELA curriculum for K to 5, that's all been saved. It's about 9 years old, and I know that, you know, Cape Verde and Haiti are always looking for materials for, especially for, obviously, education. But the committee would have to deem that appropriate to make the donations. So I'll find out from Attorney Mello how that goes on to the agenda. So it's done, obviously, in a legal way. When we're not going to use it anymore, but it could be very helpful to other places that, you know, need updated curriculum.
So if we remove some of the, you know, curriculum that, you know, and we donate it, and then we're able to swap out some of the desks and move some of the desks, is it, just throwing it out there, is it in our best interest to keep Perkins and give up Forest Street, or because Perkins has more, and I realize Perkins isn't in the budget, Forest Street is, like, I totally understand that, but I'm just wondering, when it comes to, you know, the reality of the situation, you know, which, do we keep both, or can we combine them? And then, you know, I know we're also going to be talking about, on our next line item is a new bus depot, and then, or am I getting ahead of myself, and is there going to be something that would be able to purchase that would be able to encompass all of that?
there's
Sorry,
one in that
that's-
question.
I know there's a
So-
lot,
Goal
sorry.
is to purchase something that houses everything, warehouse, IT.
Exactly.
The
One
buses.
floor at Perkins is the equivalent to the total square footage of the Foster Street building, just to put it in perspective. So right now, we're using about 1 and maybe 2/3 of the space, 2 floors. So we're close to 30,000 square feet that we're using at Perkins Ave right now. So
would it be,
ideally, you know, you're talking me from the operations perspective, yeah, I'd like to keep the space as long as possible, you know, through maybe October, and really look at purchasing the space as well. It certainly affords us a lot more utility for a lot of different reasons, so I would certainly recommend that, but, you know, that's a budgetary issue you guys need to discuss.
what if we, by October, you'll know whether that space you'll know whether that building has enough space to take over what's at
Well, it does. It absolutely does. I mean, there's no question about it. The building has a total square footage of 60,000 square feet.
So we could give up Foster Street.
We could. It has a loading dock, Foster Street has one loading dock, one or two? Two loading docks, but, it's adequate. It would not be adequate space to park all of our facilities vehicles that we usually go over
Agreed.
there. We'd have to put them at the high school like we did before, but we could arrange that.
I'm just wondering if overall it's in our best interest to keep Perkins, get rid of Foster, and then hold on to Perkins, and then just forge ahead with trying to find a bus depot that can overcome all of it.
That makes sense.
We would have to have it evaluated, though, by an architect, because right now, I hesitate on putting any office space over there without it being tested for air quality, and there has not been an active place for a while. So we'd have to make sure it was appropriate to have office space for the facility staff. So we'd want to look into that before because that was the issue why we moved out of
Foster.
Cochrane Building.
Okay.
It was because of air quality and issues there. So I just want to make sure because a lot of it's beautiful. Some of the stuff is beautiful office space, but it's been let go for a while. So
Right,
we just want to
exactly.
make sure it's
Is that
safe to
difficult
be
to
sure
do?
we can use it as an active warehouse. And we'd have to talk to Aldo, obviously, about the difference in
Yep.
price.
And we need to make sure all the environmental systems are up to par, the filtration systems, air cleaning systems. So it will take a little bit of work, a little time, but.
Do you feel like that would be worth it, Dr. Cobbs, to look into it? I guess I'm looking, your operations, so,
Yeah, it would be suitable for IT, for operations, for facilities. It would not be suitable for a bus depot. Obviously, there's no parking there for buses. So, in the longer term, if we had to choose between investing in a depot that could house all of that would be my recommendation, and maybe just continue to lease the Perkins for short term and then once we find that permanent depot, then we can dispose of Foster Street and Perkins.
yeah, no, I just wanted to throw that out there. And again, I haven't seen Perkins, but I've heard so many good things about how big it is, and I know that we're pulling some stuff out this summer, and then it'll create space, and so I just don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish with our warehouse space. And I know that we're under budget constrictions, but if we are forging ahead to try to find a bus depot, if we keep pushing on that, then hopefully we're only holding on to Perkins for a shorter period of time.
Well, realistically, even if we identify a location for the bus depot and whether we plan to acquire the property or lease it or somewhere in between, it's probably 1 to 2 years out at least.
All right.
It takes, when we bought for example, when we bought the Summer Street property, it was pretty much a full year before, when we decided to go into to buy it until we finally literally had the keys. So, it takes a while.
Thank you.
And we haven't identified a space yet, so once
I know.
we looked at a lot of spaces in Brockton, but as you know, the one on South Main Street has not panned out, so we're kind of starting all over again.
Mrs. Asa?
Thank you, Dr. Cobb. So just a quick question. I mean, I've been to the Foster Street plenty of times. What is the square footage? Because I know there's there's a second floor.
15,000 square feet
Yeah,
for the whole
so-
building.
And I've gone to Perkins, and Perkins is,
One floor is equivalent to what we have at storage space at Foster Street,
so Perkins has the basement, first floor, second floor,
the third floor.
and a third floor.
It's 15,000
that are
square feet
all-
each floor.
It's pretty impressive for storage. Parking is a little tough, but
You do have some parking in the front on the Perkins Street side, some additional parking there, and it's possible to pave some of the area out front to increase the parking space for staff. Again, for parking facilities vehicles, not so much.
I mean, we've waited this long to get a building that's going to house multiple departments,
Right.
rather than just constantly moving. And those containers that we get, you can only leave stuff in them for so long with the different temperatures, weather temperatures, things like that. But Perkins, I mean, if we could find something similar to that, I mean, that does house a lot. And we're only using a small percentage of that building, because I
Right.
believe the landlord has you know, I saw some of
That's
their
the first
stuff
floor.
being stored. So we're only using a small percentage, and it's pretty impressive. With my real estate background, I'm like, I was in awe. Like, this is a huge warehouse.
It
It's
is.
got potential.
You know, and it may be, to continue to answer your question, it may be feasible to, you know, acquire the Perkins Ave property, and then that reduces the footprint we need for a bus depot. It's just parking in the transportation offices, so it reduces the building size square footage that we need anyway.
Or do a satellite office for the transportation depot. I mean,
Right,
you don't need them
exactly.
physically where the buses are.
It's true.
So you could do a satellite office.
And there'll be ample space at Perkins Ave to be the satellite office for transportation, absolutely.
So I thought we had discussed at the last meeting that we were going to discuss in executive session potential locations that we
Right.
were looking at.
I think that's on the docket for today,
Okay.
on the agenda for today.
Okay. Perfect.
Mr. Rodriguez.
This executive session is for this subcommittee meeting.
The minutes, yep.
Right.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to tour both facilities, both Foster and Perkins. To echo, Perkins is very, very large in space. One of my major concerns with Foster Street is we have a lot of assets and a lot of equipment that go in there, paper, and the building doesn't have a sprinkler system. So if something happens to that building, we're gonna lose a lot. Where Perkins has those amenities, and you can clear out Foster Street and place every equipment and supplies that we have at Foster Street at the Perkins location and still have an abundance of space. And that's just, you know, 2 floors and not including the basement and the 3rd floor, which is, you know, once, if you have the time to tour it, the 3rd floor office space is unbelievable. Just the woodwork in there is just, you know, I was in awe when I took a tour of the property. So, but the only concern that I see, I'm not, do we even have the manpower to move all that stuff out of there by the end of the summer? I don't see that happening.
Yeah, we would have to, you contract to get it moved out, or like big spiegel, you know, scrap metal or something. There's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be cleaned out of the Perkins property, but you could do it over time. It doesn't have to be done all in, you know, because we have, if we had 2 floors, it's adequate storage space for us, for facilities, equipment, so, and take our time to do the rest of the building.
And the dollar amount and the difference in the square footage, Perkins is a lot cheaper than the Foster Street location. And it's only $110,000, you know, dollars difference in the lease space. And the unique thing about the school committee is that we have the authority to make budget cuts, even though we already approved the budgets, and make that line item and approve that funding for that Perkins Street location. So that's something that everybody should be aware of, that we have that authority. And I'm pretty sure that if we are to keep that location, that we can work with the CFO to make sure that we can see where we can make those cuts, because we do have that ability.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else have any other points?
Just a question.
Yes, Susan.
So Foster Street, has that already renewed, or, I know we were on a 1-year. That's already renewed?
Yeah, because July,
Okay.
but it's a, I think if you wanted to vacate, it's either 60 or 90 days notice. It's always in the
Okay.
contract.
Just curious, because if we have to hire outside help, I mean, this is money we're spending to move, we pre-buy to save money, but then it costs us money to store it, and then now it's gonna cost us money to move it, so how smart is all that pre-buying if it's costing us storage space? You know, so we just,
I'm not sure we're doing pre-buying this year. I don't think, there's no budget
I
for
believe we
it.
do about
Yeah, you
$2
should-
million.
yeah, which is, it's smart, but then we end up having to pay to store it, and,
Right.
because our schools
Good
can only
point.
hold so much, which is, I know at one point, someone had mentioned it, and I'm not sure if it was Mr. Rodriguez, but it would make sense to have one location and have our schools put orders in, and these are your supplies, and, you know, kind of have like a little area where all the supplies are, and that way schools are not all ordering their own supplies and then ordering things they don't need, or storing stuff that they don't need, and pretty much just do cleanouts, you know, see what everyone has, and, but I know someone had mentioned it, I thought it was Mr. Rodriguez, but it would make more sense.
Yeah, we looked at it through the accounts review with a lot of the large, you know, purchases, that, you know, we should have a central location where all the supplies are ordered and whatever the schools need, it would go through that department and they could do those deliveries. I mean, you know, we are dealing with a huge deficit, and we have to look at the best way possible to save every nickel and dime.
All right. All right, the next item on the agenda, item 4, is a review of the progress in obtaining a space for a bus depot facility. So this is item 4 on the agenda. I don't have it, just to clarify, I don't have it as an executive session because we're not talking about any negotiations into any purchasing or any specific properties or anything. So I know previously we had discussed whether or not we would put it on as an executive session item, but since we haven't discussed or we haven't had any information about going into any contracts or, you know, doing any procurement of any properties yet, just in terms of where we stand with the bus depot facility, what the process looks like right now moving forward. I mean, our buses, we're still storing them at the fairgrounds. The property on South Main Street fell through. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah,
Okay.
the council didn't approve
Okay.
that as a location.
All right.
So we have identified a place and with the recommendation of the committee and approval from the mayor's office, he has allowed Peter Mello to pursue the location. And I know he's been pursuing the owner's attorney. He has not gotten much of a response, so now we have to pretty much ask the city for a hostel taken, because I think they've tried for at least 2-3 months to get into negotiations for friendly taking, but they have not been receptive. So the landlord is not a local person, so we would now have to ask the mayor to require a hostel taking. I think we would have to go into executive session at our next facilities meeting, because I don't want to say something legally I don't know enough about.
Right.
Especially if
So
you're,
this-
if you're
this-
identifying a
yeah.
location, it actually puts the city in a,
Right. But wheels are turning. We're looking
Right.
for something.
but Peter has
Still
been,
working
Attorney
on it.
Mello's
Yeah.
been
Okay.
aggressive with trying to get them to come to the table.
Okay.
And that had been approved by the mayor to allow him to do that, but the response has been slim to none.
Okay. All right. So then our body would just be waiting for confirmation from Attorney Mello that he has received a response and we're ready to talk. Okay, got it. All right, that sounds good. Does
And I
anyone
can
have?
ask him how we list that on
Yeah.
the agenda
Right,
for next
right,
time.
right.
and then-
We could do that. Okay, Ms. Asak.
So the current bus depot, where we are now, did we get into another lease?
Yeah, we had to keep the lease
Okay.
going.
Is it a
another
1 year or is it a month to
It's
month?
always 1 year,
Okay.
but we can vacate it with, I think, 90 days' notice, and they can tell us to leave in 90 days. That's the issue. You know, because if they sell the property or decide to, basically get somebody to come in that is gonna figure something else to do with the land, then they would say to us, you have to vacate in 90 days, and we have the same option.
Offhand, do you have our lease amount, just what we paid?
This year, it's at $560,000.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
So that's why we've been pushing for, pulling a bond, 20-year bond to own it, and then monthly payments would be a lot less.
Thank you. Mrs. Ayers?
I should probably know the answer to this, but I'm really curious. What was the challenges with the city council approving South Main Street? What was their
They-
biggest pushback?
They didn't think there was adequate room to have an operation that size, and they didn't think there was adequate room for employee parking as well, because that would have been an issue. We would have had to figure out employees parking across the street, and so I don't disagree with their assessment. It just was, we went to them for what we could find and what
Yeah.
and within the budget we were given. Like, we have this much to spend, and so we had to look for something that was suitable for, so that's been pretty much, the law office did send the owner of that, because it was a city decision, they sent them the notice that they would not be pursuing it any further, and then asked us to come up with another location, which we have found, and now we have to figure out how we bring that forward.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions on item 4? Okay, item 5 on the agenda is just an update on the project for the turf fields behind the AZF skating rink. That was one of the other projects we had talked about a few months ago.
So, I know that the company that we had do the design, Vivitas, is that Vivitas? Activitas, and Jonathan, who's presented to us and provided the plans, has met with Paul Romano from the city side to put in 2 grant requests to the county, Plymouth County, to do not only the fields behind AZF, but also the Marciano. So I believe those grants have been written and submitted. So I would ask that we request at the next meeting for Troy Clarkson and the mayor to come and let us know where those stand, because we have to get moving on something, because we probably have 1 more year of the stadium turf. I wouldn't feel comfortable not having the stadium turf replaced any later than after this season. It will be on its 13th year, and we take really good care of it, and that's why it's going that long, but the shelf life is usually 10 years. And like Mr. Rodriguez has said before, with the new technology in turf fields, they do like under carpeting, they put a pad that really reduces risks of injuries and concussions. So we need to move forward with requesting that if for some reason those grants don't come through, we need to request that the city put in $1 million for Marciano Stadium. That has to be done.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee for item number 5? Yeah, Mr. Rodriguez.
I mean, we have, several other facilities as well, not just the AZF and Marciano, where it's the 4 middle schools, and also actually 5 at the Davis. The council, about 4 years now, approved $1.8 million to do a field. Now, we piggybacking off that 1.8 million, or is it just we're putting in for a grant
Separate from the 1.8.
separate
So
from
that would still be there, the 1.8.
So
That's
we-
from my understanding, yes.
So for that 1.8, we can request to utilize those funds for one of the other facilities.
Correct. Yep.
I think we just have to have a further discussion with the mayor on acquiring that 1.8 and pick one of the middle schools to get these facilities done, because our fields are deplorable. Excuse me, deplorable. Specifically with growing athletics in our middle schools. With the football and soccer and so forth, and the track. We do have track in the middle school, so they need to. Let me not say they. Through the mayor's office, needs to make a better decision on our youth and making sure these facilities get constructed.
Yeah, and to Mr. Rodriguez's point, the numbers of students participating in middle school sports has really gone up, even higher now than pre-COVID, especially with football. Just a lot of kids participating. I see a lot of the middle school kids are coming up here and working workouts, the most we've ever had at the middle school level, doing summer workouts. And the track is the cross-country and track program at the middle school gets a lot of students. So in the soccer as well. So you have some really big programs that have grown larger than what they were before COVID. So we need adequate facilities for them to practice and compete on.
And we can add that to an item for the
Yep.
next meeting too. We can identify which location they would like to see us do that, maybe try and apply that 1.8 million toward that. Any other questions on item 5? Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is just other business or new business. Does anyone have any new business or other business? Mrs. Sailors?
I don't actually have new business. I just wanted to go back to number 5 really quick, just to ask a quick question. What do you think the reasoning behind the increase of, the participation in athletics is happening versus pre-pan? I'm just curious.
I think that the middle school coaches have done a good job, and the teachers and the staff at the middle schools, principals, have really talking up the programs. I think it's parents want to see their kids involved. I think adding middle school football was huge. That, I don't know, they get, I don't know, Tony can, this is like 100 kids each team that have, they have, and then, it's just parents want their, especially middle school kids, involved in something after school that's
Yeah.
productive and keeps them busy and off the streets, and they know they're somewhere safe and participating, and it's just been the football, and only after its second year.
Second year.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's risen in popularity, and just same with cross country and basketball and soccer. It's just really picked up.
That's
And
great.
it's really good because the programs, good programs that a lot of cities and towns don't have middle school sports programs like that.
That's great. Thank you.
Just to piggyback, I have to commend Matt Campbell on community schools with athletics, because he was very instrumental in advocating for middle school football, and he's been working hard to increase athletics within the middle schools to bring in field hockey, lacrosse. So, the ultimate goal is to offer the students in the middle school level all the athletics that is offered here at the high school, because that's where the turning point is, and that's the feeder system. It's kind of like a disadvantage and unfair for kids in the middle school to wait to join a swim team or hockey or tennis until they get to the high school, and it's not offered at the middle school. So, the ultimate goal is to offer it at the middle school level, where they just fall into place at the high school. So, I had to give, Matt Campbell his flowers for that, for growing that. And then, he also sends out surveys, to the 4th and 5th graders, to the families, what sports are you interested in, to see where the target is to grow the athletics in middle schools. And the good thing about it is that the MIA doesn't control middle school sports, so we have the leverage of controlling practices and games and so forth. So that's where it is.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Isaac.
So under new business, I believe it was the last facilities committee we had started discussing our fees, rental fees, things like that. So we definitely need to update a lot the rental fees. Also, we lost a lot of money. I get it, we're renovating the auditorium. But, I've gone to a couple of dance recitals. We lost a lot of money with our dance recitals. So those are like repeat clients. I'd like to see a list, if Zelinda has a moment, if she can get us a list of repeat clients, those that we can, rely on year after year. And those were our dance recitals and different events. Anyone that's really long-term should be approved by the committee. But repeat clients, renting it here and there, I think, we are the facilities committee, and we really do need to take a dive into our rentals, our rental agreements, and make sure that, with the cost of electricity, the cost of heat, the cost of just everything in general, I don't know if we're that, plus we have to pay for custodians and cleanup and things like that. We shouldn't be losing money. It should be a moneymaker, plus offer the schools, for the community, but we also don't want to lose money on some of these rentals. So it just makes more sense to take a dive into it and just see, especially during the winter that we just went through, things were so expensive. So, you have to heat up a whole building, and I don't know what the hourly fee is, but you're heating up the whole building, and then you have custodian, you have electricity, and supplies and things like that. So I think it's time that we take a look. I know we started to with the last committee, but if we can just take a look on our rental agreements and what our fees are, and see if we can get some recommendations. So Linda does this day in, day out. If she can give us some recommendations, you know, if we can invite her to the meeting, or maybe we can meet with her and just see what recommendations. I mean, she's been doing this for quite some time. So I know I met with her last year, so we can clean up our applications and some of the things that, you know, make it easier on everybody and take a look at our numbers.
So just to clarify, are you looking for a kind of a cost estimate for what it costs to rent out the facilities per square foot or per hour or something? Because that's probably more Aldo in the financial office, because Zelinda wouldn't have the information on the utilities and those sorts of things. And obviously Aldo would have the custodian's cost as well.
I think there would probably be maybe the both of them together can get us some numbers, because each school is going to be different. The high school is going to be different. It's a
Yes.
larger space. Some of the smaller schools, it might not cost as much. But again, if they're just using the cafeteria or they're using their auditorium, I just want to make sure we're not losing money. I mean, we do want to offer the schools to the community to have them rent it, but also we also don't want to make it cheaper for them to rent our schools rather than go out and lease a property of their own, especially like for repeat customers, things like that. So we just want to make sure we're not losing any money. And I know our pricing was really low. So it's been a while since I looked at those numbers, but I mean, the new committee should, if we still have that packet, just show them this is what our rental is, and just a ballpark idea. I mean, just to get an idea.
I can work on that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's
Do you
any,
need the packet again? When we say
It's all new members.
or is there a way, I was thinking to compare like other facilities or neighboring towns, what are they charging for
They-
use of their auditoriums, that kind of thing?
so-
If that's part of the packet, that would be great to see that.
I believe we're pretty competitive, and we're low compared to surrounding, I think, cities and towns. So I think they call us to see what we're charging. But I think we're pretty competitive. But I mean, our schools are. I've come in here on a weekend, and there's meetings in the cafeterias. There's different organizations. I mean, they do utilize the schools, and it's great to offer that to the community. But we just want to make sure that it's not costing us a lot of money, especially with the cost. The cost of energy, electricity, everything. It's just all gone up. So, it wouldn't hurt us to take a look at it as a committee.
Mrs. Ayers?
I know that I got a copy of the packet. I know you've given us a copy of the rental packet in the past. So for, lack of a better phrase, it's somewhere at home in my office.
I can
But-
email it to you again.
Yeah, and I do remember, I don't
Unless you want
remember the
a
amounts, but I know that
paper
it's
copy.
different for the auditorium as it is for this area, for that
Right.
area. So I think the biggest key, not to rephrase what Ms. Azak is saying, but what is our profit margin on those rentals versus what we're charging? And when's the last time we raised the rental fees? Who knows? I think, to our point, it's worth us taking a look at. And that's all, but I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate it. I know that you've given us a copy of the packet in the past, but I just don't know if it's changed since then.
So would you like paper packets or email packet?
No?
Email's
Email's fine.
Email's
Okay.
fine.
Save some trees.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for other business, Mr. Rodriguez?
On long-term rentals, I know specifically at West, we have a group that's utilizing that facility for quite some time. I know we discussed that, but we didn't vote on it. And it's a religious group. I think that group needs to be looked at. I know they made a request to extend it, but, we are not here to accommodate a permanent location for a religious group. A school is not a religious place for them to hold their services for a long period of time. It's been over a year. We can't accommodate one group, and we have numerous groups that are making these requests that are being denied. So that group needs to be looked at, and if we are going to approve it, that has to come from this body. I'm not saying whether, I'm against it, but, if they're making renovations to their location and they need it for a certain amount of period of time, yes, we're here. But to continue for a long period of time, that's a burden on the school district because other groups that are trying to utilize that facility are not getting the opportunity, including youth groups. So I think we need to take a deeper dive into that and put some fine language in the policy that has to come before this body.
So I'm not sure what's in the policy regarding that. Maybe that's something that you'll review when you get it's in the packet. I believe the policies are in the packet that I sent you. I'll send it again, but I'm not sure. And it's your position to change the policies if you wish.
I mean,
Update the policy.
I don't know, every group that uses it, the only reason why it was brought to my attention is because, religious groups are complaining. And that's a concern. Like, we're not here for this to be a permanent home per se. So we need to take a look at that application and, vet that out.
Ms. Azak?
It's also a safety issue too. So if people are using our auditoriums in large spaces, it's just, these are schools and we have to keep inside the school safe. So you just don't know if people are bringing things in. There's no metal detectors, things like that. Not that anything's happening, but I look at it as a safety. Our custodians are not going to go sweeping the auditorium, checking everything. So it's. I think we have to up our safety with our rentals as well. Safety requirements. We do have the metal detectors. We have things. So we need to utilize what we have just to keep the inside of the school safe. Just in case someone leaves something behind and our students find it.
Again, that's back to your policy, what you want to institute for
We'll probably have
rental
to do-
facilities. It's need to be updated, I guess.
So we'll do that under policy for the committee. So we'll add that to the policy for the committee to discuss that. And we should do that soon.
We can't at the facilities level just change it and decide, to put in metal detectors or to search people the bags. We do it events, sporting events, but not every facility rental we do that. Because it's sometimes it's small groups.
Yeah, usually it's a small group, but if someone's using something long-term or, you just got to keep the students safe, students and staff. Not that anything's happening, but we have the equipment. Why are we not using it? But
Well, the equipment at the high school, we got to be very careful about moving it all around the district. We would have to purchase extra because even though it's made to move, if you move it too often, it really
You have
becomes
to
an issue.
recalibrate it.
Yeah, because I know we had some issues when we moved it to the prom and moved it back. So, we'd have to get separate ones that would just be for that, and they would move to the locations. But I wouldn't recommend taking them from the high school and putting them, because it's just, even though they're mobile, it's not the good to really move them around a lot. We would just have to purchase extra to make sure they're in most of the locations that are the busiest areas, because there are some areas just aren't busy. Like, you don't get a lot of rentals at the Brookfield or Ashfield that are mostly your middle schools, obviously here at the high school, and then newer schools like the George and the Baker are busy. So we just concentrate on the ones that they're used a lot.
I think for the most part, our policy with the metal detectors or the wanding or checking is for our own events, not for other outside agencies' events, for our graduations and those sorts of things. But
yeah,
Yeah, that cost would have to be put on the
either that or just
rental.
have a security person there. That's all. It's just, we're taking a big responsibility if someone's having a large event. People have had large events at our facilities, so we should require, again, this is reviewing the application. We need to make requirements, make sure they have the right security, or provide them names of security companies that we'll work with. And this is, give them options, but you got to keep everyone safe. Especially during the large events. But again, this is something we can go over during our policy, but we definitely need to update that policy for facilities. So we can do that sooner rather than later, because it's constantly getting rented anyway. So if we can get that policy
I'll send them out to you tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a couple of policies we want to review anyways, so I'm sure we can cover a few of them during that one meeting. Thank you.
All right.
Certainly.
Does anyone else have any items for new business or item number 6? No? Okay. So item number 7 on our agenda tonight is item is executive session for the subcommittee to meet in executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, subsection 21A7, for the purpose of approving executive session minutes of the facilities usage and planning subcommittee meetings in the months of May and June. So we would need to have a form of a motion to go into executive session and then roll call vote to go into executive session.
Motion to approve going into executive session to approve minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Ayler, seconded by Ms. Asak. So we'll do a roll call vote, I think, to go into executive sessions. Ms. Asak?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Ahlers?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we will not be returning to the Little Theater the subcommittee will not be returning after executive session, sorry. So we will adjourn our meeting. So thank you.